You're going to follow the same steps as above, numbers 3 to 5, where you're just going to allow the dog to, look at the child and pair it with a good experience for them as long as they are appropriate. And only getting closer to that child if the dog is responding well and they are able to follow the obedience cues and they are not, too overstimulated, too excitable, possibly reactive towards that child before you approach. You want to make sure they're in a state of calmness and they're able to focus on you before they're allowed to get closer and actually see them. With your helper, having your dog at a distance, you can actually obviously sit on the couch with your child, and the reason for this too is so that way there you can guide your child and you can be there to prevent any issues from happening, especially once the dog is getting a bit closer. But you do want to make sure that your child is acting calm. Obviously, if your child is screaming or, God forbid, trying to approach the dog, or when the dog walks up trying to pet them right away, we don't want this happening. We need to make sure that the child is calm and just kind of ignoring the dog as much as possible, while obviously your handler is working on rewarding for positive interactions and only getting closer to allow them to sniff that child if they are acting appropriate. So again, same thing as with the infant. Let the dog walk up if they are acting like they are calm and friendly and just, maybe a little bit curious. They can go up, they can actually sniff the child and really make sure you're gauging their responses. If they go up and sniff and they have a nice soft body, they have a nice tail wag, and everything about their body is very soft, there's no tension, there's no stiffness, there's no freezing in place, then you can reward your dog and let them know that that is good. Your helper can even call the dog away and give them lots of treats and just let them go back and sniff, but keep the sniffing very minimal to prevent them from getting a bit too overstimulated or a bit too curious, and just make sure that you are kind of breaking that focus, calling them away and rewarding, and just really maintaining appropriate, calm interactions. Short and sweet is always best. Or noticing that your dog is getting a bit uncomfortable or maybe very scared, you do want to ensure that you are allowing the dog to walk away. If the dog is acting like they are scared, we don't want them to feel like they are forced to meet the child. We want to let them know you have that option to walk away from the child, and the dog shouldn't be allowed to do that. And just really making sure that you are taking it at their pace, you are really building on good associations with the child, and you are allowing them to approach when they want. It's going to be really important that if you are noticing your dog is a bit fearful, that we are not forcing anything on them. We are really making sure we are taking it slow, we are watching their interactions with the child, and we are pairing the child with really good things like treats without them actually having to necessarily interact. If the dog is doing okay with the child can even toss them some treats on the ground. I don't recommend necessarily having the child feed them out of their hand because we don't know if the dog might be a bit rough with taking treats, and they might not want to see a child's hand coming at them right away. So I typically recommend just having the child toss the treats on the ground. It's still going to pair them with really good things, but it doesn't necessarily have to come from their hand right away. Once they're doing okay with the child stationary, then you want to kind of do the same thing as with the infant. Have your helper walk the dog away. We don't want the dog to be right there and the child stand up and possibly spook the dog. So having your dog kind of walk away, creating that distance, standing up with your child, and just walking around a little bit and having your helper really make sure they are again guiding the dog. They are not letting the dog, run up to the child or start, getting too excited around the child. They are walking the dog away, bringing them to a state of calmness before allowing them to get closer to you guys and interact with you guys a little bit. And using treats. We really need to make sure that we have some type of motivator when we are doing this to help reshift the dog's focus onto the handler and away from the child, but also really rewarding for that appropriate behavior and really pairing the child with positive associations. That is really, really important that we do that. Like we also put in the handout, it is very important to be proactive instead of reactive. We don't want to wait for a situation to arise to then try and work through it and fix it. We want to prevent these issues from happening in the first place by always supervising, always gauging the dog's responses to being around the child, and really making sure that we are teaching the dog how to act appropriate and how to behave when they are out with the child. We don't want to leave the dog and child alone together. We don't want any situation situations where the child is getting in the dog's face and trying to give them a hug, or climbing on them, or tugging on their ears. Children should be very respectful of dogs and should really make sure that they are not doing things to them that the dog might perceive as stressful or uncomfortable. So constant supervision is really, really important. A child should never try and take a toy from a dog, or try and take a bone from a dog, or any kind of resource from a dog. So that's something that is really, really important if you have a child that is able to comprehend that, to really make sure that you let them know that. And obviously for younger children, this is where we really need to make sure that we are supervising 24/7. This is why crates are very handy tools, and you guys should really utilize those crates to give your dog a couple breaks throughout the day. They can be in their crate with a nice chew toy, or in their crate with a chew bone, or some type of, fun enrichment puzzle toy. So that way they do have their downtime, they do have their space, they have that time to kind of decompress and come back to a calmer state, to prevent further issues.